After a poor performance and result for the Lionesses against Portugal, we're here to analyse it. Join us as we dissect what happened from pitch side, how Sarina Wiegman reacted too late in the game, and the doubts the result has created over England's chances at Euro 2025. This is our Portugal versus England analysis. Alright, let's get into it then. Portugal won, England won. Harry, a result that came as a shock to many.
Yeah, very much so. I think a lot of people viewed this game for England as a nice way to open the Nations League. It was a tough group, so to start off with Portugal, it felt like get a good 3 points, then get on to Spain on Wednesday. But that is not what happened for England. It was very, very, very difficult. It was a really, really poor performance, especially in that second half. And it's a really frustrating one because on a night where Spain managed to win despite being 2-1 down in the 93rd minute, England went and backed that up by drawing to Portugal. So, from an England point of view, it's a massively disappointing game.
Well, and that makes it very difficult to see England topping the Nations League group, which is an insane thing to say after only one match. But when we consider that they've got to play Spain twice, and that's going to be a very difficult game, and obviously that the first one is at Wembley on Wednesday. But I think when I look at the England-Spain game, I expect that, maybe England might get a draw, but I don't picture us winning it. And so in that regard, now it feels very difficult for us to win the Nations League group. It's a really poor result and a performance, especially in the second half, that was simply lacklustre. I think there is a distinction between the first and second half, because first half, there was some really good football. And we saw that obviously with the Russo goal on 15 minutes, that was coming for the first 15 minutes. England were very dominant. And I think that first half as a whole was a strong performance. I think Lucy Bronze, a huge part of that. And I think using Bronze in that slightly higher role was a very useful addition to the England team. So, yeah, I think she plays a role in this side, Lucy Bronze. Very good ball progressor, very good creator, and we saw that in this game. And then she was brought off at half-time. Now, whether that was injury-related, I can't imagine it was performance-related. No. Whether that was simply just rest, because there will be commands, or there will be requests, from the managers like Sonia Bonpastor to give certain players rests. Potentially it's that. But second half, Carter came on in that position, and we lost all attacking upside from that full-back role. And this is what we spoke about on Friday with looking at this squad, who else can play those full-back positions? Because we've not taken Gabrielle George to cover the left-back position. We've not taken a single other natural right-back, and we know that Letitia is viewed by Sarina Wiegman as a right-back, but she wasn't brought on in this moment. Instead, Jess Carter was preferred. And I find that really weird. And I think that in that moment, England lost all their attacking upside. In the second half, the ball just didn't really come forwards. Yeah. I mean, we were sat in the Portuguese rain. Well, it sat, to be fair, we stood the whole game, but we stood in the Portuguese rain watching the match, and it didn't come up our end in the second half. It was a frustrating one.
Yeah, it as you say, it was those two big changes for me in the second half. The first one being Bronze for Carter at half-time, and then the Portugal change to bring on Nazareth, I think, I want to say around 55, 60 minutes, where that completely changed the game, because in the first half, all of England's attacking was coming through Bronze, and Portugal's only out ball was to go long to Jess Silva, who ran into the corner, did a few step-overs, and then lost the ball. So, for England, they were managing it really well, and then those two changes happened, and not only did they lose their attacking threat, but Nazareth coming on for Portugal absolutely changed the game, because it gave Portugal an extra option, and it caused England so many problems, because it didn't mean that Portugal could force it long. They could play football, they could use Nazareth playing in that kind of more attacking midfield role, and she caused loads of problems. The goal she scored was an absolute beautiful strike, but that's what happens when you give players like Kika Nazareth space in 15, 20 yards out. So for England, in that second half, as soon as Nazareth came on, it felt like Portugal were going to score. It was coming, and it was deserved for Portugal. Yes, it was their only shot of the game, but the momentum they built in that second half was worthy of a goal. And yes, it did take a moment of magic from one of the best players in the world right now, but England could tell it was coming. I think the fans could tell it was coming. The only person that couldn't do anything about it, or didn't do anything about it, was Sarina Wiegman.
Yeah, I think there was a very different response to how this game went. Portugal made subs on 60 minutes. They reshuffled the pack. Both wing-backs came off. Amada, who was very lucky to still be on the pitch after her tackle on Niamh Charles, a very aggressive one. Thank Christ Niamh Charles was all right. If not, we were on the pitch. And then obviously Kika Nazareth as well into midfield, and then they just reshuffled that midfield slightly to allow her to be the more attacking, more advanced player. So Yeah, and that worked out really nicely for Portugal. As for England, it was another tale where you could see it coming. And it's annoying because the goal doesn't come till 75, but England don't make subs till 82. And you could see from the 60th minute that England were in a tough position. And then when we did make subs, there were some really bizarre changes. We saw Chloe Kelly on for Jess Park. I don't understand that one. Chloe Kelly wasn't in the squad in the initial team because she hasn't played enough football. Yeah. She comes in because Beth Mead has been is injured, and she just plays now. That doesn't make any sense to me. Nikita Paris deserved an opportunity. This is the type of game she could have came in and make a difference. Instead, we saw Chloe Kelly do nothing for 15 minutes. Oh, well, not even that, because it came on an 84. So, 10 minutes.
Yeah.
I didn't understand that change at all. So that made no sense to me. And then Aggie Beaver-Jones as well coming on for Grace Clinton. And then we moved Beaver-Jones out wide, put Lauren James into attacking midfield. And I thought that should have happened way earlier. Lauren wasn't playing particularly well out on the left wing, but she was at least offering more than Ella Toone was. Toone didn't do anything in this game. And yes, the northern girls in front of us may have absolutely adored Ella Toone, but she didn't offer anything in this match. So for me, I'd have moved Lauren James centrally earlier. I'd have brought on a left wing. I'd have changed the wingers because neither of them were offering much. So I'd taken off Toone. I'd taken off Park, but I wouldn't have brought on Chloe Kelly, and I wouldn't have brought on Aggie Beaver-Jones as a winger. I think we've seen that she's much more effective as a striker. So I think with Nikita Paris just sat on the bench watching this game, really weird substitutions to make.
For me, even Jess Naz is good enough. Is better enough than an opposition like Portugal to make a difference. And I think it's a really difficult one. As you say, people will say that when you draw 1-1, people will blame the defence for conceding a goal. But at the end of the day, I don't think the backline could have done much more. The defence and Russo are probably the only ones that can be happy with the way they played it in this game. It was one of those where I feel a little bit for England because on another day, they would have just seen the game out 1-0. If it was Portugal wouldn't have scored if it wasn't for the fact that Nazareth came on and scored an absolute beauty. She might have scored one later on, but
yeah, that was their only shot of the game. But the way that they played through England's line so consistently and so easily is a real worry for me. And I think, again, I know the midfield structure isn't how we'd like to have it. We played with a midfield three here rather than a double pivot. And Walsh as that single pivot player struggled, I think, a bit in there without having Stanway alongside her. Clinton and Toone didn't really offer much defensively. So they played with the lines really effectively. I still think our build-up phase looked average at best. Wasn't really much sign of progressing the ball effectively. So that was worrying. I think, again, the subs were really weird. We made one at half-time, 2 in the last 6 minutes. It doesn't do anything. So yeah, it was one of those games where it was just a frustrating watch, and I think it opens up wider questions about Wiegman because it's that reactiveness we've seen now consistently rather than being proactive. It's choosing favourites over players who deserve an opportunity. I mean, Paris has sat on the bench, didn't get a go in this game, but Chloe Kelly does, who hasn't played any football. By Wiegman's own admission, hasn't played enough football to be in this squad. I think Ruby Mace not being involved here is a really weird one for me. Our midfield had no balance. You bring someone like Mace in, yes, she may not be experienced at this level, but she can play in the position that you need her to play in. So that does make a huge difference. I just thought that was a bit odd. Again, a really frustrating watch as an England fan to see us once again not react and just wait. And it felt that a goal was coming throughout the whole second half. Eventually it did. And it was a bit too late for England to respond, apparently. 15 minutes, we didn't make time for another 7.
It's adaptability for Wiegman. What she has done with England, over the last 2 years prior to win the Euros, to get to the World Cup final, has kind of worked. But since that World Cup, going into
I'd still say since the Euros, we've not performed well.
But in terms of it's got worse for England after reaching the World Cup final. The friendlies have come and something has to change because the way she played has worked, but right now it isn't working. And with this England squad, and people will say that England it's only one loss in 7. England have played some tough teams like Germany and USA, but the difference is that it doesn't matter if they're tough teams. If England want to be the best in the world, they've got to beat those sides. A draw to the US wasn't terrible. A loss to Germany was really
the manner of the Germany loss was worrying. Yeah.
And this game here this is why it's also another big result because no offense to Portugal, but I don't view them as top quality opposition. I don't see them as challengers for the international competitions, which is why it's even more concerning to draw a game like this. Because if England lose to Spain 1-0, say on Wednesday, then we'll sit there and go, it was a close game, but Spain are Spain, they won the match. But when you drop points to teams that you should be beating pretty comfortably, that you should be better than, then it's slightly worrying, because we've seen England beat Portugal before over the last couple of years. I wouldn't be surprised on Wednesday if Spain put a few past them. And again, credit to Portugal, because I think they did okay in this game. They defended pretty well. They managed to keep it at 1 goal, and then they brought on Kika Nazareth. Shock, Barcelona player comes on, scores a goal, and they get a point. But I can see them getting taken to the cleaners by Spain, and that could be pretty nasty. No, not
when they play in April.
Yeah, it's not we know they. Oh yeah,
Spain.
Because they're playing Belgium. But I that's the difference. I think that I'm intrigued to see what happens in Belgium Portugal, but Belgium gave Spain a really good game. But again, the difference is in that game, even when Spain were up against it, they somehow managed to win the game. But for England, when they're up against it, they don't get the results, and that's why when you talk about the big competitions, when you talk about trophies, teams like Spain are ahead of England at the moment.
Yeah, definitely. And I think when you consider the position that we're in now in the Nations League, even if we get a point against Spain on Wednesday, which I think at the moment is very generous to assume that we're going to draw that game. But even if we do, if Portugal beat Belgium, we find ourselves 2 points behind Portugal, 2 points behind Spain. And yes, Spain could beat them in both games in April, and suddenly we're looking a lot more comfortable. But we'd still have to play them at Wembley. We still have to go to Spain at that point. I think we've put ourselves in a really difficult spot now. And maybe we'll beat Spain in both games, and then everything I've said is redundant. And that is football. We may draw to Portugal, go and beat the best team in the world right now.
So typical.
Yeah, the reigning world champions. But I think it is a worry. We go into this summer with a title to defend, with an honour to defend, and we don't look prepared for it. I think there are so many questions about who's actually going to play for England, because that should be, we should know our first 11, or at least 9 of the first 11 by now. And I couldn't piece together more than the fact that Lucy Bronze will definitely be at right back, and Kira Walsh will be in midfield, and Russo will lead the line. Other than that, I don't know what positions you could call. Probably Neve Charles. Yeah. Goalkeeper, we have no idea. Centre-backs, if Greenwood's fit, it creates a huge question mark there. Midfield players, again, Stanway's fitness is a concern. I don't know who's going to play in the attacking midfield role. I don't know what formation we're going to play. And then the wide players, well, you'd assume that Hempel-Mead will slot back in, but then the question arises, where does Lauren James play? How do you fit Ella Toone in? How do you fit Grace Clinton in? Yes, we've got a lot of talent, but I think it is a worry that we have no idea what our strongest squad is.
Yeah, because and to prove the point, I think that England on Wednesday against Spain will go back to the 3-back, the 5-back that we saw against Germany in the USA, because that's the way we've seen that Sarina wants to set up against the bigger side. So Wednesday's a completely different game. It's against a much better opposition, and England will set up very differently, and that will be interesting to see what happens there, because a lot of people will say that the old, if we play like we did against Portugal, Spain are gonna have an absolute field day, but we won't, because I think we'll play a different system, and even if after a bad performance, England will raise their game against teams like Spain, even if that's not enough. Even if that's not enough to win, it'll be enough to challenge, and I think that will. It's going to be interesting to how that plays, because you can't really take much from the Portugal game and throw it into the Spain game, because it's a very different circumstance, especially if England do set up differently. If England, I'd be surprised if Sarina went for a 4-back, because that I don't think that would end very well.
I'm surprised we've switched, because we played a 3-back in all of the friendlies throughout October and November. And then we've got to these Nations League games, we've just thrown that out the window to go back to a 4-3-3. And I think especially considering we don't have our ideal wingers, I think without Hempel-Mead, and this was interesting because I don't think Beth Mead's had a particularly good time in England show over the last year, but we look so much less effective without her, which I found really interesting. So there's so many questions over how this England team is going to look. I think Spain will hopefully answer some of those, but... Yeah, I think it is a worry. I think with the Euros coming up, the fact that there are so many gaps in this squad, there are so many concerns as an England fan, it doesn't fill me with confidence. And yes, we've got still 5 or 6 games in this period between now and the Euros, and so there is still a lot of football to be played. There's still a lot to be learned, but if we're in the position we are right now, it is a really worrying sign.
Especially, excuse me, especially when you look at what the other sides are doing. Spain look absolutely incredible. Germany, Netherlands played some really good stuff when they played each other.
Yeah.
It's and I know USA aren't going to be in the Euros, but in terms of talking about World Cups and all the nations in the world, the US are playing some incredible stuff.
Just smashing everyone in the Shiva Leagues.
Yeah, they were superb against Colombia, I believe. But
and they scored after 50 seconds against Australia last night.
That's fun. But yeah, I think that it's one of those where England right now are behind those bigger nations. Especially when we're talking about those Euros, I think there's 2 or 3 teams that are currently ahead of England, which is crazy to say as the holders. But it is only February. We've still got 4 or 5 months until the Euros. We've got 2 international breaks plus warm-up fixtures. There's a really good chance that England put together a decent run of form, and suddenly we get to June, July, and England are the favourites once again. So there's still a lot of football to be played. There's a lot to be worked out, but there's time to work it out. That time is running out. Sarina's got to use it, got to find something. But if she does, England could be right back on it. So it's not panic stations right now, unless we lose like 7-0 to Spain. And at that point, England are in big trouble. But I don't think that will happen again.
Even though I think that'd be a less worrying result than the Portugal game. To summarise the Portugal game, because we'll be doing our Spain pre-match analysis on Wednesday, so join us for that. In terms of rounding up the Portugal game, disappointing performance. Another game where England started well but tailed off, and it just felt like complacency crept in. It got a little bit too casual, and we weren't proactive with it.
Yeah. Agreed.
So there we go. That is everything, though, for today's video. We'll be back on Wednesday with an England-Spain preview. We'll be back for a live stream on Wednesday as well. That is everything for us today. Thank you guys very, very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.